Hello and welcome to my Woolly PhD. My name is Liz Scarf, and this is a weekly vlog about what I'm thinking about and making each week in my PhD in anthropology, all about wool here in Iceland. And today's a little different. I'm recording this through PowerPoint because I wanted to share with you a short talk I gave the other week to a student anthropology society about more than human research in anthropology. And I wanted to share with you the pictures, and the only way I could work out how to do it was through PowerPoint. So the audio is probably not as good as maybe usual, but anyway, we struggle on. So I'm sure I've done a video on More Than Human before, but More Than Human is a term that's used in lots of different ways. In academia and in anthropology. But if I just kind of said how I understand and how I'm using it is really just a slight shift in focus from thinking and researching as if humans are at the center of the ecologies that we live in. And instead just sort of kind of thinking, well, we're part of, but we're not necessarily central to. There are other things and other forces and other kinds of persons that are also playing very important roles and actually often directing our behaviour and our decisions in ways that we don't notice when we keep thinking of humans as the central kind of decision makers and directors of how a system goes or works or culture or whatever it is, right? So it's really decentralising human agency and thinking about the liveliness and characteristics of other, sometimes they're called actors, or other members of ecologies or gatherings. And so instead of everything else being in the background of human lives, we're just kind of locating humans as part of, not the centers to or leaders of. And that it's a perspective shift in a sense and invites us to think about worlds from, not like necessarily from the perspective of other things, but to look at how are other things and other persons influencing and operating and contributing to world making and livability and social ordering, a whole range of different things, right? So I'm going to jump into the talk because what I share in the talk is about what I think is a methodological challenge, so a challenge in how we actually do the research for More Than Human research, and then two sort of practical strategies that have emerged in my field work, and just a little bit about how they connect to some of the More Than Human theoretical positions. So the challenge really is anthropology's disciplinary habit of centering human meaning making and human behaviour. And it's not just anthropology's disciplinary habit. I would say it's what most, well, I don't know about this, but certainly in Western human culture, right, we think about ourselves and we think about what other humans think quite a lot. We don't think about what other persons think. We don't think a lot about what other things do. We're very curious about ourselves and each other. And so we're kind of trained to, that's how we're thinking. So that I think is one of the challenges, right, is to how to perceive non-human, more than human world. And the two strategies I wanted to talk about, and I've got sort of two examples or stories about how I have come to these. The first one is asking, how is this thing or this force or this non-human person organising this space or this little world, this context? And the second is about creating opportunities for diverse forms of attention. Now, I'm going to expand on these in a moment, but just first a note on terminology. So I'll use the word, when I use the word person, I'm referring to any animal species. When I use the word human, I'm referring to Homo sapiens, but I'm not going to keep saying non-human persons because it's a bit clunky. Right. So just saying a bit more about the challenge that I think is the biggest challenge to researching More Than Human. Yeah, it's how we're socially and cognitively conditioned to think about what we think and feel and about what other humans think and feel. And I might have an extra sort of dose of this because I'm a psychotherapist. So exploring meaning and root causes and being curious about people and how they're making sense of the world, it's my automatic kind of go-to. So fieldwork for me so far has been a lot of trying to unlearn this. The first example I wanted to sort of share is about the work that I'm doing in a mill, so a wool mill, and the mill's basically a large room with a partial divider that's stairs that go up to the next floor, and wool goes through a range of machines in the mill. And one of the biggest challenges when processing wool fibre, as best I understand so far, complete novice actually, but is static electricity, right? So this immediately suggests some qualities about wool connected to its own agency or its liveliness, let's say. So wool is electropositive when rubbed together with other things. So the friction means that, or when wool rubs up against things, it just readily sheds electrons. It gives electrons to the other surface, right? The wool then has a positive charge. The surface has a negative charge. And when this is happening in wool processing machines, it creates certain kinds of woolly chaos and things don't go right. And it has to be remedied or responded to, right? And this invokes Jane Bennett's concept of vibrant matter. It's quite useful here, where we can understand that wool isn't an inert material that we just do things to, but it possesses what she calls thing power, right? A vitality that disrupts human processes and demands a response. Now, that positive charge is not just a physical property, it's wool's capacity to affect, right? To make a difference in the world. And the main response that it demands is hydration. So, oh, hang on. I think I've. So this, okay, I was just trying to get my slides and my notes all in the right order. Here we go. So this image here, it's about a quarter of the mill space. And there's a few things I wanted to highlight here. I'm not even sure if the mouse works. I'm hoping it does. So here is a bottle of very, very diluted hair conditioner. And this is used, there's a washing machine here. Once the wool has had its first wash, well, it only gets washed once, a very gentle wash, gets mostly dried, then it comes into a machine called the picker, where the locks are basically getting opened up. This is the first machine, and so as it comes out the other end into a big box, we every now and again just spray it with this hair conditioner and water. And here in the background, this one's very hard to see, but it's an air humidifier and it's going constantly, all the time, 24/7 in the mill. Here, these are barrels that kind of like a very hard cardboard that the roving, which is like a sausage, continuous sausage kind of a fibre that's been kind of neatened up, straightened up a bit. The roving goes into there that will get spun later. Now, once it's in there, sometimes the inside lip of the barrel is sprayed with water and a plastic sheet is put over the top of them constantly so that water is not lost out of the roving while it's waiting to go into the spinning machine. And this here, this is not always here. It's not always a part of the process, but this is a giant pile of floofy fibre that has been through two machines. It should be going through the carder next, but this just happens to be too floofy and staticky. So it's been being settled and relaxed a little with a very diluted spray of just an edible vegetable oil and water. So you can sort of notice here how much water hydration is kind of essential for managing the static electricity of and the floofiness, but static electricity is a huge part of this as the fibre goes through the machines. So another one, this is the carding machine here. So the fibre that was on the floor doesn't always go on the floor, as I said, goes onto this conveyor belt and it is sprayed 7 to 9 times with just water in this water bottle. And then the final yarn has to be relaxed with steam, and anyone who hand spins knows this as well, right? We do this not necessarily through steam, but you have to you submerge your yarn afterwards to help it relax. And this one, instead of submerging, this is a pneumatic little nozzle hose thing that shoots out really fast air. We're trying to basically get this yarn into this very small hole that goes up through these pipes because this steams the final yarn product to help it relax. And here it is at the end, where the yarn's coming out the end. You can't see it very well in the photo, but there's steam actually coming out of here. So it comes through here and then gets wound onto a cone. So if we research this mill scenario from a human-centric position, right, we could observe how people are in the space with their bodies, what their social interactions are. We could look at the hierarchies of different staff, the rules for tourists versus the rules for staff in the space. We could ask people what they think about the static electricity and water and how do they manage fibre. We can think about how the humans there, the innovative strategies for managing static electricity, how fibre management orders social groups, interactions, all kinds of things, right? We could think about it like this. But if instead we think about this from a more than human perspective, we might inquire into how wool actually runs the show in this mill. That it directs human interactions and sociality, it directs hierarchies, it directs technological development, it directs machine use, it directs the layout of the space, the clothes we wear. Like sometimes we're down to t-shirts and we're sweating slightly because of the need to keep the humidity up in the room, right? All because wool is generous with electrons. And similarly, we could think about how water is organising the show here in the same way. So water's capacity to relax wool is a fascinating interaction to think through as well, right? So this is the first strategy I was sharing is basically asking how is this thing or this person or this force organising this world, this space, this gathering? It helps to shift from assuming that, of course, humans are organising the mill to instead thinking from the perspective of something else that might be organising it. So we're decentering humans as the kind of core organising principle, right? Now, of course, organising a gathering or an assemblage, as it gets called sometimes in more than human theories, it's a collaboration of different kinds of liveliness and agency and activity. It's not just one or the other thing. It's not just wool, it's not just water, it's not just humans. It's the sum of interactions, not even a sum, it's too reductionistic. It's a range of complex different interactions, right? But I think it's hard to think of the whole system at once. So thinking from a range of different perspectives and kind of breaking it down a little bit, I think can help develop a sense of the whole system and the interactions happening between members. And I think this is essentially what Bruno Latour means by sort of following the actors in he calls them assemblages or a gathering. But when we trace wool's property through the mill, we get to see that it's not just a passive material being processed, but it's an actant that makes other actors, that's humans, machines, water, makes other actors do things. And the static electricity isn't just a problem that humans solve, it is wool asserting its agency and recruiting water as an ally. This is the first example of thinking, trying to think and perceive in a more than human way. And the second one I wanted to talk about is pigs. So for about 2 months, I took care of a small herd of pigs. They're not small pigs though. They're about between 70 and 90 kilos. And twice a day I would go and feed them in this open field. They had a shelter down the end, but otherwise they just kind of roamed pretty free in a very, very large field, seemed to have a nice time. So these pigs are being reared for meat. They're also part of a regenerative farming system, and they ostensibly have the job of evening out some tussock grass fields. It's a little bit experimental, and I think they don't really do a quick enough job of it. But anyway, I was completely captivated by these pigs and our interactions. And I can say that feeding pigs in an open paddock is an adrenaline sport. They are very passionate about food when they're hungry, but they can also be quite selective. So I can report that they love croissants. Here is one eating a croissant. They're not so keen on sourdough, but they will eat it once the croissants are gone if they're still hungry. But they will kill you and everyone you love for sweet pastries. And in these conditions, it's really hard to perceive anything beyond just trying to stay on your feet and survive the task. So the participant observation thing, which is the central methodology in anthropology, right? Feeding pigs is a lot more about participant and a lot less about observation, because it's pretty hectic and it's a bit of a survival game. The feeding job is relatively quick, so I wasn't spending a lot of time with them. But after a couple of weeks, the idea popped into my head to name them all. And the first name that kind of just popped into my head was Isabella. And then the joke kind of expanded that I would name them all something ending with Bella. So there would be Arabella and Mirabella and Citronella, etc., right? Now, aside from being funny, because I never actually assigned names to specific pigs, I did get curious as to why I had the impulse to name them. And I realized that I was starting to think about them as individual people, not just as a species group. So then I kind of had to wonder, why did this change? And my current theory is that it was because of time and attention. It was that time and attention spent with these pigs transformed them from objects to subjects in my relationality with them. And so it made me wonder what would happen if I spent even more time and attention, or different kinds of time and attention with the pigs. So to make opportunities for more spacious encounters with the pigs, I took to feeding them, and then I would wait for them for a bit to eat and not feel sort of so hungry anymore. And then I would get down to pig level by sitting on the tussocks in the paddock, and to create opportunities for interaction that were more spacious than desperate hunger allows for. So here I am sitting on a tussock grass, and this pig kind of wandering up to check me out. And so here's one of them mouthing one of my gumboots and sniffing my hands, and I'm touching her nose and she's touching my hand, and they would do this a lot. And also because they wanted to mouth my hands as well, which I was not up for. And they would have mouthed any parts of my body, my legs, they tried as well. And so my hand was partly, this is me touching and feeling and getting to know them through haptic perception, through cutaneous contact, but also me kind of setting some boundaries about where they could put their teeth and where they couldn't. And this image kind of, and this practice, right, I think reflects Donna Haraway's notion about becoming with. So how we become different people through our relationships with other species. And that sitting at pig level wasn't just better observation, it was allowing myself to be transformed by pig sociality, to become someone who could be sniffed and mouthed and someone legible to pigs on their terms. So allowing them to sniff me, to feel me in my boots. And I found and I guess this was the thing, it was a different kind of attention that I was offering, and a different kind of temporal activity, like time-based activity. So I was staying longer than feeding time, I was slowing down, and there wasn't an agenda. And I found the same thing important in the mill. Does this need to make time to be with the machines and the wool when no one else is around, when we aren't producing anything, when there's no time pressure, but to create a spaciousness for sort of being with, where I could have a more of a pondering kind of attention that just isn't possible when you're needing to do or to produce. Tim Ingold writes about is a notion of correspondence, where we're not sort of representing the world, but we're answering to it through sustained attention. And the mill work became a practice of corresponding with wool's rhythms and demands, learning to move with rather than simply on materials. So this is my second hot tip for perceiving the more than human, is making opportunities for diverse kinds of time and attention, including something we might call more spacious. I think there's better ways to probably describe that, and maybe a little hard to put into words too, right? But both strategies, the time and attention and the sort of asking the question about what organises this, I think help go beyond the sort of default humanism that's been part of anthropology for, well, it does tend to dominate. So yeah, first asking how is whatever, this thing, organising this space. It's a cognitive reorientation, a thought experiment that kind of dethrones human intentionality. And the second, this kind of spacious, diverse attention. It's a temporal and bodily practice that allows non-human rhythms and agencies to become more perceptible. And I think together they create opportunities to become with more than human liveliness. And that's a big part of, I guess, the more than or the non-human turn is to not set oneself apart from what we're studying, but to immerse, to become with, and to go along with, not just observe from some distance, I guess. And also in my case, to sort of help me take seriously the world-making capacities of wool and water and pigs and electrons, to not just be looking at, oh, what are humans doing here? So that's the talk that I did, and had some really interesting questions and thoughts about that during the panel. And yeah, if you've got any interesting thoughts or questions, or you don't have to think that they're interesting, but you could share them anyway, because sometimes we have very interesting thoughts and questions, but we don't think they're interesting, that they are. Anyway, stick them in the comments if you want. I'm very keen to have chats about these kinds of topics. And hopefully this is going to work out okay to share what I have been making. I have only been working on one thing. If you've been watching the last couple of episodes, you know that I have a deadline. Here's something I'm not going to do next field trip. I'm coming to the end of this field trip. I've got a few weeks left. And so I'm thinking a lot about, what do I do differently next time? Next time, I'm not going to give myself knitting deadlines. There's so many things I really need to be doing with my time, or should be doing with my time, that I'm now just like, no, I have to get this sweater finished because anyway, I'd like to say I'm still on track. Am I still on track? I'm not sure. It's not impossible yet to finish this and have it blocked by the end of the month. It's not impossible yet. Let's say that. Oh yeah, my darling daughter, if you're watching and you don't want to see the sweater because it's for you, stop watching now. Just for a couple of minutes. You can listen though. This is it. I have finished so hard to show these half-made things. This is the neck down here. It is a little bit too big. I'm working on decreasing. Not sure how we're going to go. We'll see. It's a bit big for me. I think my daughter's a little wider, broader in the shoulders. We'll see. But this is the Altheda. I don't know if you can. The Altheda sweater by Jennifer Steingass. Takes me a while. But I have finished the colour work. I've separated for the sleeves. I am now knitting the body and adding in some extra decreases. And I'm knitting this in the Plutelope from Thingborg Knitting Wool Collective in the south of Iceland. And Thingborg is this amazing group of women. And every January they go to the Istex scouring facility in the north, and they spend the weekend going through the bales of fleeces, and they pick out their favourites, about a ton of them, and then they get Istex to make the Plutelope with it, and it's all undyed. And they basically, I think they will have like a light grey, a light brown, a dark brown, a dark grey. I don't know that they're too white. Not sure. Anyway, I'm holding together the light brown and the dark grey for the mane and using their light grey. So there's no dyeing done in this. They're very lightly washed. So the Plutelope is very interesting. It is a pencil roving, basically. It's not twisted. There's no spin in it, so it's quite fragile. I've shown that before here, I think. It's quite fragile to, I can sacrifice. Oh, here's the end. It's quite fragile when it's like this, like you can just pull it apart like that, which you can't do with a spun yarn generally. But once it's knitted up, it's very strong. And I have to say, I am loving it. I am going to have to knit myself maybe a sweater, maybe a cardigan with some as well at a later date. So that's all I have been working on. And yeah, it's a really lovely pattern. And I was recommended actually Jennifer Steingass's work from a local super expert knitter here, and quite a few I think Icelanders knit her work. And she's actually, Lopapasers tend to be knitted bottom up traditionally here, but also can be done top down. And Steingass's work is, I think it's mostly top down, which most knitters are more familiar with. I think if you're sort of from outside of Iceland, no, that's probably not right. Let's say North Americans and maybe British and Australians. I'm not really sure about other European traditions, whether they have more of a bottom up or top. Anyway, rambling now. So that's what's going on this week. I hope, hope you enjoyed that. And that was interesting. And am I back next week? I am back, but I will just let you know that I am taking December off, so there won't be any videos because I'm taking some annual leave. That's exciting. I'm looking forward to that. But otherwise, I think I've got at least another 2 videos before then. So yeah, I will see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.